Let's see here. Let's get some volume going. Hi, Taylor. Let me say that again. Hi, everybody. It's Dr. Bob here, and we're diving into a few minutes to talk about addiction and recovery. I'm happy to have you here, Taylor, and we've had previous conversations, and you know this. I want to invite you and everybody to share comments or questions that you have as we go along. I'll dive in. I'll scratch the surface here. We have a half hour together, and I'd like to very much make it kind of an interactive improvisation together. So whatever questions are foremost for you, write them in, and I'll do my very best to respond, okay? I want to start by talking about something that doesn't get discussed very often, and that is in so-called recovery, addiction recovery, what is it that we recover? My partner, Jason, framed this well. What in the hell do we recover in this recovery business? And I think that's a really good question. And so I'll touch on that right now. And what I'd like to do is talk about what it is we recover, why that's important, and why it's so doggone difficult to get back to what it is that we're actually seeking. So let's start by talking about what it is that we recover. I met today with a group of really sincere men and women in early recovery from severe addiction, probably 20 or 25 young men and women from all over the country. And I asked them the same question. I was very curious to see their response. I said, what is it that is the single most important thing, like priority number one for you in terms of what you want to recover? And we went around the group, and it was really quite extraordinary. We had, hi Stephanie, welcome to you. Hi Jason. We went around the group and we had 25 non-overlapping responses. I was completely blown out. Hello, Tom. I was really blown out by the diversity in the room, and yet there was something that connected us all, and that which connected us is that we're all human beings, and that we all want some similar things, and even though the specifics vary, I was very touched by what one man said, and it was later on. It was just brilliant. He said, this is probably after 20 people had spoken. He said, Bob, for me, it's not about recovery because I never had what it is that I want. He talked about becoming addicted when he was a very young, he was a young boy, and that's not unusual in my experience with the work that I do, for sure. And he said, I'm interested, and I love this. I told him I was going to steal this from him. He said, I'm interested in discovery. Recovery would suggest that you're recovering something that you once had. And if I never had it, which is what he was saying, if I never had it, then for me to experience that would be to actually discover it. So I like that. I'm going to play with that. But I think you get what I'm saying. You know, one of the statistics that comes up often is this one, is that 1 out of 4 Americans are currently clinically addicted to substance. And you might not think that is that many, but before I say more about that, let me say that statistic draws on the fact that 1 out of 4, they actually look at 1 out of 4 Americans over the age of 12 are currently clinically addicted. And that gets things very sober very quickly, no pun intended. They used to look at age 18 and over, but they realized they were missing so many people that are clinically addicted. Hello, Amanda. Wonderful to have you here. So if 1 out of 4 Americans over the age of 12 are currently clinically addicted, this gentleman today in the group, when he says, I'm not about recovery, I'm about discovery, you can begin to understand that. If he, as so many people, began addictive behaviors at age 10, 11, or 12, and that's not at all unusual in this day and age, witness the statistic I just told you, then there truly is never been something developed that one would want to recover. And so whether it's recovery for you or discovery, what is it we want to recover? And my response to this gentleman went this way. I said, I think you've got a good point. I said, I turn towards the Eastern traditions who talk about it this way, which I really like. They say what we want to recover is our original face before we were born. Now, that's an odd thing to think about, isn't it? I guess because we're from the West, or most of us are. To recover my original face before I was born. however you understand this, if you understand it in light of a religious tradition, or not. I don't think it's imperative that you understand it that way, but that you have some vision of your destiny, your fate. Why is it that you're here? And this is really what we talked about today in the group. There were 25 different responses of people saying what they care most about, what they feel like they want to accomplish in this lifetime. And what was in common with everybody was that active addiction completely gets in the way of them actualizing who they really are. And even though the visions of what each one of them wants was different, and there wasn't replication in that entire group, the commonality is that something at the deepest self that they want to live in this lifetime. I want to thank all of you for joining me. I'm going to continue ahead here. And we'll be moving through a few themes today. I'll just mention because a few of you just came on. We're talking about what it is you want to recover, or in the language of today's group member, what it is that you want to discover. There wasn't a person in the group today who couldn't answer that question. I was really struck by that. Every single person had a number one priority that they wanted to discover/recover. One of the things that we talked about is something I learned from psychology, and some of you will know this. I asked the group, I said, what's the most effective way to motivate anybody? Short term, get somebody to do something immediately. And people gave different responses. They talked about positive reinforcement. Somebody said candy. And I said, this is going to sound politically very incorrect, but the best way to get somebody to do something quickly is to punish them. And I gave examples of beating somebody or electric shock. I don't mean to disgust you all, and there is an asterisk at the end of that, but punishment is very effective in the short term, but you know exactly where this leads. It's grossly ineffective in the long term. And I asked the group, I said, what are the problems with that? And they got it, is that aggression, punishment breeds aggression. And so it may motivate me in the short run to move, to do whatever you want me to do, but I'm not going to forget that you made me do that. And I'm not going to forget what you did to motivate me. And so I said, I think it's the same way with recovery from whatever addictions we have. And by the way, when I talk about addictions, I'm not just talking about addiction to substance. I said 1 out of 4 Americans are currently addicted to substance. That includes alcohol, nicotine, because it's so incredibly addictive, and then all the other psychoactive drugs that we hear about. The most common ones for me, the most severe addictions I run into a lot in my work, are addictions to heroin and the opioids, like pain pills on the one hand, and methamphetamine and other stimulants on the other. And so 1 out of 4 Americans over the age of 12 are currently clinically addicted to those substances. When I first say that to groups, by the way, they sometimes think that's not that many. And then I say, just think about that for a second. That means 80 million Americans right tonight are clinically addicted. And clinically addicted means being addicted to a substance where they cannot stop using it, and it's having negative impact on their life in terms of their health, their relationships, and their ability to contribute. For example, to parent, to go to school, to work. And then I say, well, what percentage of those that are currently clinically addicted, it's 80 million Americans, what percentage of those get help? And this is where it gets really bracing, is that only 10% of those currently clinically addicted get help. That means that 90% don't. That means that when I'm sitting in a group like I was this morning, the group I was referring to, and I have 25 members in that group, all of them are in recovery from severe addiction, early recovery from severe addiction, that they are the lucky ones. They are the fortunate ones because they're in treatment. That means 72 million Americans don't get help. And that's beyond tragic. So what's to be done in treatment? How do you turn this around? Well, it's some combination of having a vision, and that's where we started tonight, having a vision for what it is you want to recover, or discover, why is it you're here? You know, what are you here to accomplish in your brief lifespan on this planet? And to know that so deeply that becomes your North Star, that it guides you in your actions day to day. That's absolutely crucial in sustained, successful recovery. We're talking about recovery from substances, but while we're at it, let's talk about recovery from any behavior. The definition of addiction is doing something, not being able to stop it, even when it has negative consequences. And I just named 3 areas that are typically understood as being impacted by addiction. It's our relationships with ourselves, including our physical health, our relationship with others, including loved ones, and our capacity to contribute in the world. And if you think about it, then what besides substance might we be addicted to? Well, some of these are widely known, and some of them are getting more press. There's been a fair bit of awareness about gambling addiction over the years. There's more and more awareness about various kinds of compulsive sex addictions, including addiction to pornography. There's addiction, we've been aware and get more and more research and understanding of addictions that involve compulsive overeating, to nowadays with cell phones and we're on computers, it's just as easy to get addicted to gaming, video gaming, addicted to social media. Ironically, here we are on social media, addicted to work, addicted to buying things that I don't need, addicted to working all the time and having no life, no balance. Makes me think that almost anything imaginable could be addictive. And it's not the fact that you do something a lot that makes it addictive. What makes it addictive is that you do something a lot that's actually tearing your life apart. The example I give is that I've been drumming since I was 9 years old, and I drum actively currently. I'm age 64 now, and I'm highly active as a drummer. It gives me great joy. It's a source of great creativity, an outlet, a connection to others. And as far as I know, it's had minimal or no negative impact on my life, and primarily, if not exclusively, positive impact. I do a lot of that. And you may have hobbies, you may have things that you invest in that you do a lot of that are highly positive, and kudos to you. It's only when it turns in on our lives that we have to look at it. Just as a quick statement here, if 1/4 of Americans over the age of 12 are currently clinically addicted to substance, 90% of Americans in a nationwide poll admit that they have at least one behavioral addiction right now. That's 90% have at least one behavioral addiction, which includes those that we just talked about and others as well. I always ask groups, when I suggest that statistic, I always ask groups this question: do you have any thoughts about the 10% that said they're not addicted? The answer is always, they're lying. And then I ask, well, why would they lie? And it gets us into something really important here tonight, which is people will lie about their addiction because it's shameful. You know, no one wants to brag about being addicted to anything, whether it be a substance or behavior. To be out of control with something that's destroying your life, who would want to admit to that? The miracle of it to me is that 90% would admit that they have something like that going on right now. That's amazing to me. And I think the 10%, maybe to be more generous, just to understand the question. So the fact is if we're talking about addiction, we're talking about something that's universal. It's universally human. Those of us that have been addicted to substance, including myself, represent 1 out of 4 of the population. 90% of the population admits to having addiction as part of their life in terms of behaviors, and we've already decided about the other 10%. So let's talk about this for just a second before we move forward, and that is this, is that to be addicted is to be human. In fact, the root word for addiction comes from the Latin term addictus. And what does that mean in Latin? It's the Latin word for slave. So to be addicted is to be enslaved. And every one of us knows about enslavement. Every one of us knows about being enslaved. If it's not to substance, a drug, alcohol, or another drug, or cigarettes, vaping, then it's addiction to some behavior. I'm not even including how we can get addicted to attitudes. I have a dear friend, Guy Duplessis in South Africa, who's writing a book right now on ideological addiction, how we can get addicted to belief systems. We can get addicted to attitudes. I'll leave that to Guy right now, but he's not wrong about that. You know how you can get so attached to anger and resentment that that itself becomes an addiction that's destroying your life. So back to what it is that we want to recover. We want to recover something that's not enslaved. To put it in another language, the goal of addiction treatment and recovery is liberation. We call what we're doing here the Vitality Project. My partner Jason and I have been working together for many months now to create an online recovery support group for anybody who's either directly affected by addiction, that is by being addicted themselves and interested in recovery. Many of the people we'll be working with and already are people that are early in recovery and want additional support. But also for all of us who have family members or loved ones who themselves are struggling with addiction. We need support too. And so it's meant to cast a broad net. And its single goal is liberation, to be liberated from enslavement. If you're married to somebody who's addicted, if you have a son or daughter who's addicted, you want their freedom, their liberation, you want their recovery, and you want your own as well, right? Why do we call it the Vitality Project? Well, vitality is linked to living a full life, and we talked about this earlier. What are you here for? Whatever your vision is for your life, I know that for me, I've got several kind of fundamental driving principles in my life, and all of them require full functioning. I want a robust life, and I want to contribute robustly, and that's going to require personal vitality. And one thing I know for sure with active addiction is that it hamstrings my vitality. So we've established what it is that we're recovering, which is who we really are and why we're here. We've also laid down the groundwork of why it's so dadgum important that we seek recovery. If we want lasting fulfillment in this life, all the research I know, in fact, I don't have it in here, it's in the bedroom, I have an entire periodical right now that's just on the science of happiness. And everything that I know about the research about happiness from psychologists and sociologists and anthropologists and so on suggests that those who are happiest are fulfilling their life dream, their life ambition. And it's not about how much you have in terms of material acquisition, it's about how true you are to your essential reason for being. And so I'm going to wrap up here in the next few minutes, tell you a little bit more about Vitality Project, but I want to suggest this and put this out there. I'm just noticing that Cassie joined. It's great to see you, Cassie. Anne, Kelly, Lisa, thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. It's great. It's great to connect up with you guys. If this is what we want, what makes it so dadgum difficult? I mean, what's up with addiction? Why can't we just say no to that? And herein lies the rub. If you know addiction from the inside, and I didn't always, but I do now, I waited till midlife to get really seriously addicted to alcohol and other drugs. And the sense of being out of control with something was really, really scary, upsetting, had hugely damaging consequences in my life. But I now understand addiction from the inside in a very deep way. Many of you listening tonight or reviewing this later will understand that. And the fact of the matter is that in addiction, we lose leverage, we lose traction with what is most important to us. If we think about it in terms of the brain, if you think about the brain for just a second, the back part of our brain, the hindbrain, controls heartbeat and respiration, automatic processes. Very, very important, but out of conscious awareness. For example, you don't have to remember right now to breathe. Chances are that's automatic. I hope it is, okay. And then there's the midbrain right between my headphone here. The midbrain is in charge of survival functions, and we'll come back to that in a moment. And the front part of our brain, the forebrain, is the seat of our personality. it's what makes you you. It's your compassion, it's your capacity to communicate, it's your ability to distinguish between right and wrong, to look at the long-term consequences of your current activity. It's the navigator, it's your signature. And what happens in active addiction, and many of you know this, but I just want to reinforce it, and it's why it makes recovery so challenging. We're talking about what is it we want to recover. We want to recover our essential selves. We want to I want to be the best Bob I could possibly be in this short lifetime I have. And addiction comes in, and I'm happy to dub addiction the devil. I'm not happy about it, but you get what I'm saying. Addiction is the devil. And why is it the devil? Because it steals our souls. It steals our birthright. And how does it do that? Biologically, what happens is it wipes out the frontal cortex. And so in active addiction, if you take me up to UCLA in active addiction, if we take you up to UCLA in active addiction, and that's active addiction to substance and or behavior, two things will be very clear when we do a brain scan on me or you. The first part is the frontal cortex will be shut down. It goes offline. And so think about it. The very basis of who you are is offline. Hello, Nicole. Hello, Nicole. Wonderful to have you. Jen, you too. Thank you, Ann. Thanks for joining. Jen, I think today's your birthday, so happy birthday to you. That's awesome. Yeah. So what goes offline is what makes Jen, Jen, what makes Bob, Bob, what makes Nicole, Nicole. That goes offline. And what you're left with is a midbrain, which is the survival center of the brain, that's been confused or hoodwinked into believing that the addictive behavior or the addictive substance is more important for survival than anything else. And more important than our values. One of the young men I saw today in the group talked about what he wants to recover. I was very touched by this. He says, I want to recover my core values, Dr. Bob. And he named those core values. And the very last gentleman in the group, we came all the way around, the very last gentleman is a veteran from the wars in Iraq. I have great respect for this man. He's talked a lot about trauma that he's experienced in the group and is really sincere. And he shared with us an acronym from his military service. It's an acronym based on the word leadership, and it includes loyalty, responsibility, duty, etc. He went down a list of other core values, and both gentlemen are talking about this. They want to restore what's the most essential and most important part of themselves in addiction, and that's the part that goes offline. And so why is recovery so difficult? Well, it's so difficult because at least early on, especially early on, active addiction has actually taken over, and that's why I call it the devil. The midbrain has actually been hijacked into believing that it's in charge of things, and it's vital for survival. I need a fight or flight response to survive, just as I need my hindbrain, making sure that my heartbeat keeps ticking. But what gives me my essential birthright, my signature, as a human being, as an individual human being, that's the frontal cortex. And we've developed substances down through the centuries, and especially in the last century or two, that human beings are no more evolved to manage or handle than the man on the moon. We're not capable of handling. The opioid epidemic is a good example of that. With an opioid, you get with an opioid like heroin, you get 10 times the normal amount of brain chemicals that are tied to survival, 10 times the amount that is normal with the opioids. And there's nothing in the natural sphere that's more than 2 times the amount. We get motivated by brain chemicals like dopamine. What do you do when something like cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine comes in and just destroys your natural survival instincts, overruns your morality, overruns your decision-making capacity, overruns who you are and takes over? That's what happens in active addiction. And so one of the 2 things, and I'm going to say a word about the Vitality Project. I'm really invested here with you guys today, and we'll be meeting again this Saturday. There will be an announcement coming out about this Saturday. I'm really investing in providing good information about addiction and recovery. My background's in psychology, and I bring all of that background. I'm also very invested in looking at the biology of addiction, not so that we become smarty pants, but that we have some kind of leverage against the incredible shame that goes hand in hand with addiction. I think that good information, good knowledge can help to diffuse a lot of the shame and some of the stigma that comes in from the outside. And the second thing that I'm really invested in, it's really witnessed by you guys being here. I've been saying hi to people that are here tonight because I care about you. I really appreciate you joining and supporting, is that not only do we have brains that are in need of healing in early recovery especially, but across our lives, but that we share brains. The technical term in psychology is co-regulation. I see Nicole, I see Jason, I see my daughter Amanda, I see Tom, I see a whole list of all of you, Ann, Jen, all of you that have come here. We share a connection, and that means that our brains synchronize with each other. We actually do directly affect each other. And one of the wishes with the Vitality Project is to address what has been sad for me to see in the work that I do here locally, and that is people come and get treatment here in Southern California. I lead 14 groups a week at 8 different treatment centers. I'm very, very active in the work that I do. People have bona fide transformative experiences. What's sad to me is that they go home to wherever they live, in the Midwest, in the South, back East, whatever, and there may not be sufficient support for them in a community like what we're trying to create here. Either they can't afford it, they can't access it schedule-wise, it doesn't suit them, or it's just not enough. The conventional recommendation is, when you leave treatment, is let's get you into a 12-step group and get you with a sponsor. And I completely support that. People for whom that is sufficient, they do swimmingly well. There are many people for whom that's not sufficient, and we're wishing to create a complementary resource here with the Vitality Project. Let me say a word about the Vitality Project. Jason has just, Tom said, you are a smarty pants. You got me, Tom. You got me. Try not to be. Okay. Jason is my partner, and he's just put a notice here, and you can see it in the chat section, is that the Vitality Project is going to be set up, and it's rolling right now. Let me just say a word about that and how you can get involved in this community. First of all, it couldn't be any more motivating to join. It's going to be a membership community. We're charging $1 for the first month. This is a special deal. Thank you, Jason. $1 for the first month, and 50% off of our normal going rate to make this work. We're going to charge $100 a month. It's actually $99 a month for membership. And to encourage anybody who's interested here tonight, $1 for the first month and half off, 50%, which would be $49 for as long as you want to stay involved. That's really for your membership ongoing. So that's the money part of it. Let me tell you what goes on in the Vitality Project, and then I'm going to say goodnight to you. I do daily podcasts. Every morning I do a podcast, and so there's a 5-minute or so podcast every morning. I also write a blog post every day about that podcast, and that's delivered in the afternoon. And so you have those in the Vitality Project, daily information in the spirit of what we've talked about tonight. We also have 3 group meetings right now scheduled during the week, and they're scheduled at different times so people can work it around different time zones and different schedules. And we'll expand that actually as we grow. And so I'm in charge of those group meetings, and we dialogue in those group meetings. Right now we do it with sound. Eventually, as it gets bigger, it may be with you writing in. We have a private, it's a confidential Facebook group just for members, where you can engage 24/7 with fellow members in the Vitality Project. Whether you're somebody in recovery yourself or the loved one of somebody in recovery, you can count on there being a growing community of support through the discussion forum. And finally, I think one of the really cool things is we're going to have a buddy system in which people will pair up. I'm already doing this with several people. We pair up in buddies, and you've got somebody that you can track your progress. If your progress is in recovery from addiction, you'd have that. If your progress is in managing the stresses of being the loved one of somebody in addiction, you've got support that way too. So we're coming at it from every possible angle. With I figured it out today that just what I just told you represents about 5 hours a week. If you want to be involved in everything, about 5 hours a week of content every week. I did the math on it actually, and that works out, even at $99, that works out to $5 an hour. I'm going to get rich doing this, aren't I? That's not the goal. The goal is to be helpful. And you can actually be more involved because we also are creating a clearinghouse of tons of information, presentations I've given. We now have about 100 or 150 podcasts that are online and available for our members through our membership site. We also have links to other presentations I've done, as well as TED Talks that are out there, as well as other resources. There's a ton of good material, and I like to be on top of that material and share it with you guys. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. If you know somebody that would be a good candidate for the Vitality Project, please pass along this information. We'll be back on Saturday morning. It's going to be at 11 o'clock, I believe, Pacific time. I'm going to be doing it from Texas. I'll be with my daughter in Texas, so I'll have to get the time right. But send your friends back to join us, and please check out the Vitality Project. You can go to vitalityproject.life to find out more information. And I also noticed Jason has actually put a link. If you're interested in signing up with this special kind of incentive rate, do that. I'd love to have you join me. We have multiple groups a week, all kinds of resources for you or for anybody that you care about that's dealing with recovery from addiction in any form, whether it's a loved one or directly dealing with it. I think that's it for now. Michael, you just joined. It's great to see you. Anne, that's so sweet. Thank you, Anne. She says, you are rich. Thank you. Makes me want to cry. Yeah, there's so much beauty in recovery and getting our birthright back on board. I'm incredibly grateful is what I am, Anne. Thank you all for joining. This will be on our Facebook page where you can actually go back and review this, I believe. I hope that's right, Jason, where you can review this. They'll be archived. I know they'll be archived on our membership in our membership site as well. You're welcome to write me through this Facebook page. If you have questions after the presentation, I'd be very happy to respond in writing. You guys take good care. Thanks for joining me tonight. Much love to you. Bye-bye for now.